everyone, and welcome to Deconstructing Leftists. Today, I want to just spend a little bit of time talking sports with you since we just came through the Super Bowl. And I want to talk a little bit about the halftime show and the controversy there, and some of my thoughts about sports in general. As somebody who used to be a huge sports fan. I mean, going all the way back to my childhood when I started watching baseball and football. And there was a time where almost any sport that was on television, I was watching it, whether it was baseball, football, ice hockey, NBA, basketball, even college sports, just about anything. And in more recent years, I've pretty much gotten to where I don't pay much attention at all to any sports. I will look up scores every so often just to kind of see what's going on with the different teams. But as far as sitting there glued to the television, not anymore. And I wasn't really a casual fan by any stretch of the imagination. When it came down to the NFL, I was the type fan who would turn the television on right after church. It would be on for the first game at 1 o'clock, and I would have the television on football all the way up until the final game on Sunday night was over with, whatever time it ended, 11, 11:30, whatever time. And I'd watch all the in-between stuff with all the commentary about the games and all of that. I mean, just all day long. And when it came down to baseball, I would watch my favorite team. I'd subscribe to MLB TV, and I'd watch or listen to generally about 100 and maybe 100 to 120 baseball games a season, plus the playoffs and the World Series, of course. And I was the type, too, that would get very excited about the games, too. The one that would be yelling at the television and so forth, and get very excited based on what was going on. Some people would say it's like living and dying on every call. That's kind of the way that I was when it came down to sports. So what changed for me was certainly the beginning of it was the politicizing of sports. When it comes down to, basketball got so bad, I abandoned it a long time ago. I never was a huge basketball fan, but I would tune in to the Hornets when they were playing, and I would watch a lot of Hornets games. And when I was growing up, before the Charlotte got a team, before they got the Charlotte Hornets, I was a Boston Celtics fan. And so I did pay attention to the NBA, but they got so political that I absolutely just quit watching it. And then I was down to baseball and football, and occasionally hockey. I pull for the Carolina Hurricanes. And before that, we got the Hurricanes, I used to pull for the New York Islanders. But we got to the point where I started seeing politics in everything. The NFL seemed to be the first one to really get bad about all of this liberal and woke ideology. And then I saw it also in baseball. And of course, we saw stupid things like name changes of the Washington Redskins, and then later on in baseball, the Cleveland Indians changing their name. And I'll still always personally look at the Washington team as the Redskins and Cleveland as the Indians. They had those names for so long. It's hard to really seriously think of them as anything other than those team names. But they started politicizing things to a ridiculous extent. And then with the NFL, I started to almost come back and watch a couple of games because I was over at someone's home where they had some games on, and I started to get a little bit excited about watching the games again. And then what do? They get to the Super Bowl and they decide to have a halftime show celebrating Pride type programming. And I'm like, I am not going to watch that. And I didn't watch any. I haven't watched any football since then, except, again, if I was over at somebody's home where they had a game on. That's about it. I don't tune into the NFL anymore. And then, of course, we had that situation that came up this year with them deciding to use Bad Bunny as their entertainment. Somebody that very few people would care anything about seeing at all. And I ended up watching the TPUSA halftime show, but I never even watched the football game. I just tuned into the Turning Point USA halftime show, and that's it. Now, I've seen a lot of Super Bowls over the years before I tuned out the NFL. And I will tell you that, in my opinion, this halftime show, the one that was put together by Kid Rock, was right on up there as good as anything the NFL has put out, and was better than most. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it was hands down the best halftime show I've ever seen. There's been some good ones over the past years. I remember one of my favorites from a long time ago was when they did a tribute to Motown, because I always enjoyed the old school R&B music. And they also had the one with Paul McCartney. I've enjoyed that one. So there's been a few really good halftime shows over the years. But the one that was put on by Turning Point USA was very entertaining, and I think it was probably in the top 5 or 10 ones I've ever seen. And it was certainly better than the kind of junk that the NFL seems to be wanting to push on people today. I don't know what the numbers are that actually tuned out of the official Bad Bunny program, but it's amazing that they got anybody hardly to do it. And it's not because that the program would have been worth watching with Bad Bunny. It wasn't. I guarantee it wasn't worth watching. But it's to get somebody to actually change the channel to a different halftime show, and not on regular television, but it was a streaming type thing you had to do. You had to make the effort to make that decision to do it. And even if somebody is not caring about Bad Bunny, I mean, a lot of people just leave their television on and go, get snacks or, use the restroom or whatever else, and just sit around and talk while they wait on the third quarter to start. But it's amazing, really, that they were able to pull it off as well as they did. I haven't seen the ratings yet. I know they had all these estimates, but I don't think we've got official ratings on any of it yet. But I did watch the Turning Point USA one, as I said, and I thought it was a very entertaining halftime program. No matter what anybody else says, I noticed somebody had a slur against it online where they were saying they watched it so we didn't have to. It was a very entertaining halftime show, and I have heard a lot of people criticizing the Bad Bunny program, that it was one of the worst halftime shows ever put on by the NFL. In my opinion, Roger Goodell should be fired. I think he is the worst NFL commissioner in the history of the NFL, and they need to get rid of him, and they need to get somebody who actually cares about fans. Clearly, he doesn't. All he cares about is promoting his left-wing woke agenda. And there's no real reason to promote any side of politics in sports. People get enough politics when they're, outside of the sports. They don't tune in for that. They tune in for the games. And the only reason that anybody still watches the NFL is because they grew up with it and they're kind of hooked on the games. They love the sport. And that's why they're still there. But they've lost a lot of loyal people that used to be big fans. I know that. Again, I was a huge fan. And I know a lot of other people that either are now just very casual fans or they're not watching at all anymore. And they used to be big NFL fans. So I think they need to fire Roger Goodell and find somebody who actually cares about the fans. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about baseball, which has also done some things that they've shown they don't care about the fans. They've been pushing a liberal agenda as well. I remember back at the time when the COVID stuff was going on and they weren't allowing any fans at the baseball games, but they were doing the season. They were playing at least part of the season with no fans in the stadiums, which I thought was stupid, but nevertheless, they were doing it. And as a huge baseball fan, I actually did try to tune in a few games on television like that until I started seeing them pushing their woke and left wing agenda at baseball games with these huge banners of uh, Black Lives Matters. Now, I want to make it clear for the record, Black lives absolutely matter. All lives matter. I care about all American lives. Well, I care about it. Nobody should be harmed. I don't want to see anybody from any race or for any reason harmed, religion or race or anything. But when they're promoting Black Lives Matters, they're not promoting just the idea that we should care about every human being because they're all created in the image and likeness of God. They're promoting politics because Black Lives Matters is a left-wing political movement. And so anyway, that turned me off to that. I turned that game off when I saw that, and I pretty much stayed away from baseball. Now, I have started to try to come back a few times and watch some baseball games, but then they've done some other things. They've meddled with the rules. I'm a National League fan. My team has always been the Atlanta Braves, and I've always been a huge Atlanta Braves fan, going all the way back to the early '80s. And so anyway, but the baseball commissioner made changes to the rules. For one thing, bringing in the designated hitter the designated hitter in the National League. Something that I always thought was dumb. I'm like, why do you even have such a dumb rule in the first place? It takes away from the strategy. And why is it that one position you don't have somebody hitting? I mean, they should be part of the game. They should have the pitchers should have to bat. And if you're going to come up with this idea, well, we want the best pitchers and a lot of them can't hit and so forth, then why in the world don't you just have one offensive team and one defensive team like what they do in football? If you're going to go down that road and say, we're going to have one group of players that plays the field and one that hits. We don't do that. So why in the world do you make the exception for the pitcher? And then at the same time, you can say the same thing about the catcher. A lot of catchers can't hit very well either. But if they're great on defense, you have them in there anyway. They might only hit 200, but they'll still be in a game if they're really good at throwing people out and stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't have a designated catcher. So, I mean, the whole idea is ridiculous. But I probably wouldn't have left the game over that. I think it's a dumb thing to put in there. I would wish they'd get rid of it all together in both leagues. And if they want to say, well, the unions won't put up with that because they lose a certain amount of players, well, then let them have a couple of other players, like add to the roster during the regular season a couple of extra players or something to take the place of the designated hitter. But get rid of that stupid rule. Now, anyway, that's my opinion of that, but I wouldn't have left the game over that. But there is one rule that I did leave the game over, and it will not come back again unless they get rid of it, and that is the ghost runner rule. That is one of the dumbest things they have ever done. There is no need for it, and it ruins the game. It changes the outcomes on so many games, and it's so unfair to the pitchers who come in relief. And the fans don't like it either. And Rob Manfred knows the fans don't like it, but he is leaving it in place anyway. They've got his excuses for it, but we have gotten by with baseball. One of the things I loved about baseball was that you'd sometimes get these extra inning games. I've sat and watched a game that went 18 innings before. And I loved it. I mean, and some people would get bored with it. It was a 1-1 game, and it ended up, going 18 innings before it was decided. But that was part of baseball. But we've got this ridiculous guy who is over baseball, the commissioner, who doesn't care anything about what the fans want. And as far as I'm concerned, they need to get rid of Rob Manfred too. So, from my standpoint as a former fan, would I ever come back to baseball and football again? Possibly, but it starts with getting rid of Roger Goodell and Rob Manfred. and getting somebody who actually cares about the fans and who doesn't care about promoting politics. And again, I don't think they need to promote any politics one way or the other, conservative or liberal. Just keep politics out of the game and let us just enjoy the game. Oh, and then there is one other thing. This is strictly football. I haven't noticed it as bad in baseball. There's always going to be bad calls in any sport. But in the number of bad calls in football are ridiculous. And it's to the point where it seems to me like there are people that are rigging the games to come out a certain way. All you got to do is have some bad, referees making bad calls. They can change the whole outcome of a game. And it looks to me like that's going on. Now, you can say, well, you can't prove that. No, I can't. But I can tell you this. Either they are throwing games intentionally, or they are the most incompetent people ever, and they need to be fired. They need to be replaced with people that actually know the rules and will actually interpret them properly. So that's another issue I've got with the NFL. Can't trust the outcome of the games because they've got awful people out there on the field calling the games. So anyway, that's my thoughts about baseball and football. And I know other people probably, I know there's a lot of fans that feel the same way I do. I'm sure there's some bunch of people out there on the left that love the woke stuff. They love they're okay with the rules changes and all that. I'm sure they're out there too. But I was somebody who subscribed to MLB TV. I don't anymore. I was somebody who bought sports stuff for people for gifts, and even would buy it for myself. Things to commemorate, playoff wins or World Series wins, stuff like that. Like I've got a plaque on the wall from the 95 World Series where the Atlanta Braves won that. I don't have one for their most recent one. I didn't even watch that World Series because, again, I've gotten soured on the way baseball has gotten. I certainly would go right back to supporting the same teams again. I'd watch the Carolina Panthers again in football. I'd be pulling for my Atlanta Braves again. But until there's some changes with the commissioners and they get back to actually caring about the fans again, I won't be returning. And as far as halftime shows go, I don't know how many left it, but a lot. Whenever a bunch of people leave, even in the millions, it affects ad revenue. And if Roger Goodell wants people to watch the NFL halftime show, he needs to get somebody in there that the fans actually want to watch and stop pushing his stupid liberal and woke ideology. That's all I want to say on today's Deconstructing Leftist program. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, I want to invite you to subscribe. And hopefully I'll be back soon with another program. Take care.